Hello again, everybody. It's your old pal Guardian Enzo coming to you live on tape from beautiful downtown Kyoto, Japan. Well, actually, a couple miles from downtown, but close enough for government work, as my dad used to say. And it's fall, although it's still bloody hot in Japan at the time I'm recording this. It's September. That means the fall anime season is just around the corner, a couple weeks away from kicking off. And it's season preview time. And this is a big one. This is going to be an effort. I'd like to keep these YouTube videos relatively short if I possibly can. The season previews always go a little bit longer, but if I let this one go in my normal method of how much time I give to every show in my preview, we'd be here for way too long. I don't want to do that. So I'm going to blow through a lot of stuff quickly, unfortunately, and it's just reality. You don't want an hour-long video. I don't want an hour-long video, but this is an hour-long video season. The first thing I want to do, though, before I get into the season preview is very, very quickly say thank you, sincerely, deeply thank you to all of the people who've stepped up to support LIA after my fundraising plea last month. The response has been terrific, not only in terms of financial support, which has been good, don't get me wrong. I mean, you'd always want it to be more, but I'm genuinely touched by that. But also just by people letting me know that they're happy that LIA exists, that they're happy I'm still doing it, and that they want me to continue. And that really does mean a lot to me, believe me. It's been 11 years of my life. I don't want to let that go. I always said if I could find a way to continue the site, I would love to do that. It looks like we're, knock wood, on the verge of finding a way to do that. Stay tuned for more details on how that's going to play out. But suffice to say, the response has been really good, and I'm extremely grateful. Now, let's get on to the fall season preview, and what a season it's going to be. My goodness me. It might not be a great season. It might be a great season, but it might not. But it's certainly going to be a busy season. The busiest season for me as a blogger in years, which is going to test whether I still have the ability to handle a workload like that. The last really big anime year we had was 2016, in my view, and the last really, really, really big anime season we had would take us all the way back to spring of 2012, which was maybe the second biggest anime season ever for me after spring 2007. So this is a huge season in terms of hype shows, some of which I'm not even covering in my preview, but stuff like Bleach is coming back. That's a huge hype thing, especially for my buddy Samu. All kinds of big hype shows, only some of which I'm covering. And then just personal hype shows for me, stuff like Mob Psycho that I'm highly, highly keyed up to see. And yeah, I mean, it's a big season. I mean, any way you slice it, it's a big season. I've got 6 shows which have been in year-end top 10 lists for me in the season, and half of those shows have been on multiple top 10 lists. You've got, if I'd done a top 25 list for the 2010s instead of a top 20, there's 2 shows this season that absolutely 100% would have been on it. You've got a previous number 1 show in a year-end poll. And you have the two biggest commercial powerhouses, I think, to hit anime since the adaptation of Tokyo Revengers, and that would be Spy Family and Chainsaw Man going head to head, the master mangaka and his assistant. So it's an intriguing season. It's a busy season. It's got a lot of hype shows, and it's got a lot of shows that I personally am hyped about. And as a result, like I said, I'm going to be very busy, and that busyness starts with this preview. So let's jump right into it. Otherwise, we'll be here all day. And no, I'm not starting with Chainsaw Man. I'll get there soon enough. I'm starting with Mob Psycho 100 Season 3 because I've really, really been looking forward to this one. It should conclude the adaptation. A lot of folks I know tell me that this material is the best in the manga, and the first 2 seasons were pretty darn good. Mob is probably the top show for me, that the top multi-season show that never won the top spot in any year-end poll. Like I said, it would have been in my top 25 of the 2010s if I'd gone. It would have been number 21, number 22. It or Dororo would have been 21. So, and I was hugely hyped for Vinland Saga, which did make that top 20 list. I was hugely hyped for more Made in Abyss, which did make that list. But even though they did and Mob Psycho didn't, I was more hyped for Mob Psycho's sequel this time around for whatever reason. And I'm expecting a lot here, even though Tachikawa Yuzuru, the great director, is not actually directing this season. He's in the chief director role. But I always believe that Bones loves Mob Psycho and they'll treat it well. I'm not worried at all. There's almost or no CGI the entire season. It's all hand drawn. It's a great production. It's been a great production from the beginning. Even for Bones, I think it's something that they pull out all the stops for. Yeah, this is my number one show. I love Mob. I love Reagan. I love Ekubo. I think they're all great characters. I think the supporting cast is great. I think Mob has a great character arc, and he's an incredibly relatable protagonist. It's a really deep story, in my opinion, but also a great piece of entertainment. And maybe this will be the year that Mob Psycho breaks through and takes that top spot in the year-end poll. We'll see. It's got some pretty tough competition, even with some of the fall schedule leaking over into 2023 because it's multi-core. There's still some big-time shows this year competing for that spot, not least Made in Abyss Season 2. So Mob Psycho is my number one, and I almost feel like I don't even have to talk about this one that much because it's you don't meet too many people who are not fans of Mob Psycho 100. It's a great show. We have a guy named Hasui Takahiro, who is a veteran longtime Bones animator in charge this season. He has not done directorial work as far as I'm aware, but with Tachikawa there and the chief director role, I'm pretty confident that not too many beats are going to be skipped here. So it's a testament to how hyped I am for Mob Psycho that Golden Kamuy 4th season is not my number one hype show, but it is the second show in my highest expectations category, and this was my number one show of 2020. It was not close. It was clear number one. It was easily the best of the first 3 seasons, and the first 2 made my top 10 list as well. So I'm pretty hyped for Golden Kamuy. Again, this could finish the adaptation of the manga. It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out, because from what I understand, it seems that we have more than 1 but less than 2 full cores of material to adapt here. And Golden Kamuy has been a 1-core series all along, so I don't know what the deal is. I'm surprised at how commercially successful GK has been, so it wouldn't shock me, as much as I hate to say it, to see this maybe finish in movie form after a 1-core final season. It's a show that, from a logistical standpoint, it would fit, and I think a Golden Kamuy movie, I think the production committee would feel they do pretty well with that. The interesting variable with Golden Kamuy is that we're changing studios. We went from Geno Studio, which is not Bones or Production IG, but I mean, they did a good job, especially by the 3rd season. As that show got more successful and more profitable, you could tell more and more money was going into it, and by the time we got to the 3rd season, it was a very solid, high-level production, with a team in place that really knew the material. Nanba Hatoshi was a director who clearly knew and loved Golden Kamuy. Now we're at Brains Base, which once upon a time was arguably my favorite studio for a couple of years, but then they had the big split with Shuka, and a lot of the talent left, and Brains Base has frankly not been the same since. That's not to say they won't do a good job with this season. The guy they've got directing it this time around is a man named Suguhara Shizutaka, who is the director of Kyokai no Rine for them, the Rumiko adaptation. I like that series a lot. It's not real popular, but I like it. It's just, the big question is, it's a completely different team. It's a completely different studio. They do have the same writer adapting, which is good. That'll give them some stability. But that is a bit of a variable. It's a bit of a variable. Even with Takago Noboru writing it, it's still a bit of a variable seeing a show transition after 3 seasons to a new studio. So we'll see how that goes. I'm pretty confident. The mangaka Noda Satoru is an incredible mangaka. It's a great series. I fully expect it to be a great season, but we do have that little twinge of uncertainty only because we do have the studio change. We'll see. And not the last show, the third show in my highest expectations category is Mairmiashita Iruma-kun third season, which kind of is another one of those speak for itself shows. First season didn't quite make my top 10. The second one comfortably did. The third season, I'll be surprised if it doesn't. And it'll be 2023 because it's going to be 2 cores. But Iruma-kun, just an easy show to love. I sold it short at first. I did not give it enough credit, but that changed over time. I really came to appreciate that this was a shonen, a big-time shonen that people were sleeping on. And even in Japan, I think a lot of people don't realize how popular this series is. And it has become very, very popular. And it's an incredibly positive series. The main character is such a nice kid, and he actually has good things happen to him because he's nice, which is kind of a weird thing in anime, And he goes to hell, and it's the best thing that ever happened to him, is how I like to put it. And again, no changes here. In terms of studio director, it's Bandai Namco, which I still prefer to call Sunrise. Same staff, same cast. This is one of those adaptations that you just say has really used the format of anime to expand the charm of the material beyond what's capable of the written word, with all the musical numbers and the casting. It's really a case where the anime, I think, for me, has transcended the source material. So, Mairmiashita Iruma-kun. Next, well, what do you know? Many of you may not have heard of this show. It's a sleeper, but it rounds out my highest expectations category, and that's Chainsaw Man. Chainsaw Man, wow. Fujimoto Tatsuki is 28 years old. He has already one assistant who's doing Spy Family, which is the main competition for Chainsaw Man for commercial supremacy right now. Another one doing Dan to Dan, which is one of the buzziest manga out there and is sure to get an anime in the next year. Wrote 2 highly successful and critically praised one-shots in between Chainsaw Man Parts 1 and 2. The second of those 2 is called Sayonara Eri, which is the one I like better of the 2, although Look Back is great as well. I personally have not read any of Chainsaw Man, and I would have started this series at some point, except that it got to the point where I knew the anime was coming soon, and I thought, well, rather than be a Johnny-come-lately to reading it and then following the anime, I'm just gonna go in cold and let the anime wash over me as it will. So, my expectations, it's in the highest expectations category. Most people have a very, very high opinion of the manga. I'm often resistant to super hyped properties, but the general consensus on Chainsaw Man is that it's pretty special. So, and Fujimoto himself says it's kind of a dark FLCL, which certainly has appeal for me. We have a MAPPA series here. Now, MAPPA supposedly optioned this series with Fujimoto as soon as it started being serialized. If that's true, I don't know. They're also doing a big song and dance about how there's no production committee. It's just them. But of course, there is a production committee. It's them and the publisher, Shueisha. It's a small production committee, but it's a production committee. MAPPA, everyone knows the deal with MAPPA. Their history with employee abuse is horrific, but they have a stable of big-time properties that would be the envy of probably any other TV anime studio at this point. If they're not fools, they'll do everything within their power to make the Chainsaw Man anime a big-time success. I don't suspect it will hurt for budget. Whether it will hurt for scheduling and logistics in the production itself, well, that's the map of tradition, so we'll see on that part. Um, it has a relatively unknown director in Nakayama Ryu, which is interesting that they didn't put a high-profile director in charge of it. But I suspect they're going to give this as platinum a treatment as Mappa has it in them to give anything, because even with Jujutsu Kaisen in the stable, I think they would like Chainsaw Man to become their signature property. That's just my personal opinion. We'll see. The whole thing about Denji and the devil and fusing with him and being able to turn into a chainsaw. I don't know enough about this story to make any comments about the plot, about the characterization. I only know the reputation, but I know this is the most hyped anime to come along in a very, very long time. I think even more hyped than Spy Family, which was super hyped and has gone on, as I expected, to be a monster success commercially. And it'll be very interesting to see how the Chainsaw Man phenomena commercially compares with Spy Family. It's a very different sort of fan base. Spy Family is a much more all ages sort of series. My concern with Chainsaw Man, if I'm honest, is if you follow that fan base online, they can be pretty hard edged, and frankly pretty negative. And you get your fill of that with big shonen properties, but it is something I have a bit of a cautionary note about as we go into this, especially because I'm going to be blogging it and people are going to be commenting. I hope it stays positive. I'm pledging to be impartial about it. If it's great, I'll be the first in line to call it great, but I'm not going to call it great because it's hyped. I'll call it great because it's great if it's great. At the very least, I'm sure it's going to be interesting. I'm sure it's going to be visually interesting. I'm sure it's going to be thematically interesting. And the fascinating part is going to be watching how it plays out on the commercial side and on the critical side. So Chainsaw Man, that's huge. There's no two ways about it. For the anime world at large, that is the biggest hype show of the season without any question. And all that, dear listeners, that was just highest expectations. So that'll give you an idea, because now we're into the mid-table category. And honestly, this would be a very, very, very respectable modern anime season as a top category all by itself. It really would. Let's start with Boku no Hero Academia's 6th season. Every one of the 5 seasons has been in my year-end top 10 list, and the 5th season barely made it in a weak year, admittedly, but that's because it had some serious adaptation problems caused by the interference, both narratively and the production side, from the movie, the most recent film. And that should not be an issue this time. And the Paranormal Liberation War arc is a very, very good arc. And it should take the whole season pretty much without them having to do anything fancy in terms of tweaking material or reordering things. So it seems almost impossible to believe that Hero Aka could be a sleeper, but to me, this season of Hero Aka is a sleeper because of all the big hype shows, and because the 5th season was the weakest. A lot of people are definitely sleeping on Hero Aka. And this season of Boku no Hero Academia, which will be eligible for my 2023 top 10 list, is going to sneak up on people. I can pretty much guarantee it. And of course, it's also Bones along with Mob Psycho. They're having a busy season, but they have they have a parallel track studio system there, so it doesn't hit them as hard as it does most studios. In fact, I think this production on this season of Boku no Hero will be better because there's no theatrical film currently in production. So we'll see. Hopefully Natsume Shingo 2 is much more directly involved this year than he has been in the last couple seasons because of those films. But all I'm going to say is, if you're down on Boku no Hero Academia, and generally speaking, this series can have a very negative fan base, don't sell this season short until you see it, because it's going to be very, very good. This category is full of sequels. Another top 10 from the past show, Yowwamushi Pedal, It's been more than 4 years since we had a Yowwamushi pedal series. It's finally back with Limit Break. Um, I am a big Yowapeda fan. I like the earnest and kind of straightforward and very unironic tone of it. Cycling is one of the most relatable themes for a sports anime because even as adults, most of us still do it. So I really, not much reason to doubt Yowapeda. That's another one of those shows that's been in my year-end top 10 list. Another one, Spy Family Part 2. Yes, it's in my mid expectations category. Basically because I don't consider Spy Family to be a great series, just in my personal opinion. I think it's a very, very good series. I don't personally consider it great. But it is excellent. I think it's better than Tokyo Revengers. I think it's better than Jujutsu Kaisen. I think it's better than Kimetsu. Of all the big kaiju series that have come out in the last few years, I think it's the best of them. It's very, very good. There's some very good material, I think, coming up I think broadly speaking, manga readers will tell you that the second core has better material than the first core. I've only read bits and pieces of it, but I kind of get the sense that that's true as well. I'm expecting it to be very interesting, and it's very interesting to see this go head to head with Chainsaw Man, because again, we've got a series where you've got a series where the mangaka, the master, is doing one, and his former assistant is doing another, and they're the two big dogs in the commercial side. So there you go. That should be fun to see play out. Although, again, Spy Family is a very, very different sort of a fan base than Chainsaw Man. I think it's a much broader fan base, but not as deep a fan base. I don't think people get quite as insane about it, but I think it does reach demographically wider than Chainsaw Man does. So I think there's room for both. I also want to say that, by the way, that Spy Family fans are some of the nicest. It's one of the nicest fan bases in big time tentpole manga, in my opinion, at least from my experience so far. So good on them for that. Then we have another show that was in my top 10 list just last year, Fumetsu no Anata A, second season, To Your Eternity. And Brainspace picked up Golden Kamuy, but they lost this one. This one is going to a relatively unknown studio called Drive, quite a small studio. And there's a director named Sayama Kyoko, who I assume is a female director, and there are several of them in this preview, which I think is great when we see that in anime. It's becoming more common. Not a lot of directorial experience there. So again, new studio, new director, who knows? And the thing about Fumetsu is it was the hardest show of its year for me to rank. And that's because the gap between the best episodes and the worst episodes was honking huge. First episode, phenomenal. Last episode, great. One arc, phenomenal. One arc, absolutely putrid. And the rest of it, somewhere in between. It's one of the most inconsistent shows I ever recall. But another one of these that's going to spill over into 2023 for eligibility. We'll see how it goes. I'd like to see if this show could be consistently at the level of its best material or close to its best material, in a way, say, Golden Kamuy manages to evolve into. It could very well be one of those top 3, top 4 contenders. I don't expect it to do that, but will it be in the mix for top 10? Maybe. It's possible. So that's 8 shows in, basically. 1, 2, 3, yep. 8 shows in, and all of them are established. Most of them are sequels. In fact, they're all sequels except for Chainsaw Man, until we get to a show that's really not a big, huge hype title, and that's Cool Doji Danshi, which is coming from Studio Pierrot, and it's a 15-minute series for some reason, which is kind of odd, but that's long enough that I don't think I have to ding it too badly for it in terms of the hype category. Another female director, Kon Chiaki, one of the biggest names in anime direction. I'm not always a huge fan of Kon-san, but when she's on, she can be great. It's kind of a quirky source material. Basically, it's about a bunch of guys, kind of semi-connected stories about a bunch of guys who have a public persona of being kind of like really cool, ikemen kind of guys, but in reality, they're kind of dorky and lacking self-confidence. Some people I know who have read this manga really, really like it. And so this definitely falls into the sleeper category for me. And then last in this middle tier for the season is Blue Lock, which is another pretty big hype show. It's definitely a stalwart of the new manga genre, the subgenre of sports anime for people who hate sports. And this is definitely a thing now. There's no question about it. That Birdie Wing golf story was certainly a good example in recent terms. I'm a bit leery of Blue Lock because the premise here is that the JFA, Japanese Football Association, is so upset about Japanese strikers not being ruthless enough that they decide they're going to lock up a bunch of their teenage strikers in basically a prison camp and put them in a survival game against each other to turn them into psycho killers on the pitch. Frankly, I think it sounds kind of a dumb idea, but it's a extremely popular manga. It is soccer of a sort. So I'm curious to see where they go with this one. I mean, 8-Bit Studio, they can do good work. We'll see. It's not a series that I'm not someone who hates sports. I'm someone who loves sports. I'm someone who loves soccer. So I'm not the target audience for this necessarily, but I'm interested. That is it for the mid-table category this season, which a lot of seasons, like I said, wouldn't have been a bad top-tier category. And finally, the modestly interested category, which is an interesting mix of shows. And I'm not going to take the time to go into all of them again, just because we've already talked about the time constraints this season. Second core of Tiger and Bunny 2, a Netflix series. Netflix... Again, it's going to be a deal where I'm going to have to find time to blog it, and I don't know how I'm going to do that in a season where I'm already swamped, but I mean, who knows? Urusei Yatsura, a reboot of a series, remake, whatever you want to call it, the old Rumiko series that got a 200 episode anime and OVAs and movies, and it's a well-liked series, but it's not like... I didn't think people were crying out for a reboot of Urusei Yatsura, were they? So this one kind of surprises me. But it looks good in the previews, David production, and it has an incredible lineup of A-list seiyuu playing basically every role. So, I like Urusei Yatsura. I don't think it's Rumiko's best work, but it's representative of a time. And the most interesting thing for me will be whether this version of it is representative of the time when the original came out or the time when this version is coming out. It'll be interesting to find out. Next on the list is another one that I'm kind of have sleeperish vibes about, and that's Koukyuu no Karasu, another Sunrise series. And this one is it's a series based on a novel, or a series of novels, actual novels, not light novels, not web novels, about the Chinese imperial court, a fictionalized version, obviously, because it's a fantasy. And there's a mysterious woman called the Raven Consort, who's rumored to be some kind of a witch or a sorceress, and she has a strange relationship with the emperor. And interestingly, the director of Gintama is directing it, which is sort of odd. So I don't know where this is going to go, but I'm interested enough to be intrigued, and the previews look good. So that's Koukyuu no Karasu. Then we have Seiken Densetsu Legend of Mana, the Teardrop Crystal, which is based on a RPG. Generally not a big selling point for me. But it's a decent staff. The previews look pretty good. I'm giving it a shot. I don't know, vibing that it might not be half bad. We'll see. I could just be totally wrong. Then we have Do It Yourself by Pine Jam. Pine Jam is an interesting studio. They're innovative. They try to do different things. They try to be creator forward. Their productions tend to be chaotic. The previews for DIY are really eye-catching. It's got a great director, Yoneda Kazuhiro, who did Hozoki no Retetsu and Akatsuki no Yona. And as usual with A-list directors, he's got a great staff of animators working on this, and you can tell in the previews. It looks really. It's got some serious talent behind it. Conceptually, a hardcore cute girls doing cute things show is a tough sell for me. Even though I coined the term, it's still a tough sell for me. And this one is cute girls in a club at school, being adorable, making stuff. I mean, it doesn't get any more brain-deadingly cute girls doing cute things than that. Again, not the target audience for this, but because it's Pine Jam and because it clearly has a lot of talent behind it, starting at the directorial level, I will definitely be at least checking it out. It's a category like Isekai. I mean, I always figure once in a while there's got to be one that breaks through and gets me. Maybe this will be it. Shinobi no Ittoki, about the feud between the two great ninja clans, Iga and Koga. Kind of a blind shot on that one. And then Eternal Boys from Leiden Films, which is an interesting one for me. I was kind of really interested in this. It's about a bunch of middle-aged guys, although middle-aged in anime terms usually means like 23, but middle-aged guys with quotation marks who decide they're going to leave their salaryman jobs and become idols. Maybe there's a bit of a Full Monty ripoff to that, but that could be interesting. Unfortunately, I've heard rumors that this thing might be a short, like a short, like 3 minutes or 5 minutes, but I don't know if that's true. If it's a 3-minute show, obviously it's not something I'm going to blog, and it probably won't be worth blogging. But if it's full length, Eternal Boys could be a show that surprises you a little bit. Okay. So my Will Definitely blog list is the longest it's been. It has more sequels on it than any of my Will Definitely blog full lists have been, probably in 3 or 4 years. And then of course you got to blog Chainsaw Man. So it's going to be a busy season for me. As far as sleepers, yes, I'm going to call Boku no Hero Academia 6 a sleeper because I really think people are sleeping on how good this season is going to be. It is going to be a deceptively good series. It's really going to blow past, I think, more hyped shows this season and remind people of why Hiroaka is one of the biggest franchises in the world. And yes, it still is. That and Cool Doji Danshi and probably Koukyuu no Karasu are the sleepers of the season for me. Nothing in OVA. A Made in Abyss mini episode. Maybe we'll get to see Merle, which would be nice, but other than that, nothing. But OVA is basically dying, so that's no surprise. Oh, the Tonikaku Kawaii OVA, actually, it was delayed. It was supposed to premiere in summer. It's going to be in November now, so that one will turn up. And then I guess that second season of Tonikaku Kawaii, for the record, will be in 2023 sometime. And then last is the theatrical category, and even though summer is usually the biggest theatrical season, and even though this preview is already longer than I want my preview videos to be, I have to talk about theatrical for a few minutes because there's some really interesting films coming this season. And I'll go chronologically on these. Premiering in early October is Boku ga Ashita Subete no Kimi e and Kimi wo Aishita Hitori no Boku e, which are the interesting thing about this. They're novels by an author named Yomoji Otono, and they're set in parallel worlds. And what's happened is they're adapting the two novels in parallel worlds. Two different studios with two different directors are adapting the two books and releasing them at the same time, which is kind of an interesting approach that I don't recall having been done before. And also, Kasai Kenichi is directing Kimi wo Aishita Hitori no Boku e. And he's a great anime director who has not done a whole lot in recent years. So it's always interesting when Kasai Kenichi does something, something new. Bokura no Yoake, a sci-fi series, a space-loving kid as robot cat who turns into an alien ship. It doesn't get any more 80s anime sci-fi than that, but I'm curious to see where that goes. No huge names associated with it, but it could be a theatrical sleeper. Suzume no Tojimari, of course, it's Shinkai Makoto. That's a big deal. Shinkai Makoto, uh, no exaggeration, changed the way anime was perceived commercially in the theatrical realm, certainly internationally, um, with Kimi no Nawa. Um, I have a certain old fogey attachment to his early stuff because I find it has a sincerity and an honesty that his more polished recent stuff lacks. Um, I'm not trying to be a curmudgeon, but I honestly feel that to a certain extent, Shinkai has gotten obsessed with making movies that people expect a Shinkai Makoto movie to be. That said, a Shinkai Makoto movie is going to be gorgeous. Um, and the romance, he can do well with that. And so we're not really judging from this. It's about a teenage girl and doors opening randomly across Japan. So it's your magical realism, your teen romance, clouds, trains. It's Shinkai Makoto. I'm sure it'll be good. Um, I hope I hope it rings truer than his last two films have. Although Weathering with You to me was less calculated than Your Name, which was more popular. But we'll see where that goes. Like I said, any Shinkai release is a big deal. Then we have the first Slam Dunk, which is notable not only because it's a slam dunk movie, which is interesting, but also Inoue Takehiko, the mangaka, is directing the movie, which is pretty wild. He has no experience as an animator or as a director, as far as I know, but he is a phenomenal artist. Much of this is going to be CGI, which it is what it is. I wish he was spending his time cranking out new chapters of Vagabond, but obviously, in a way, he can do what he wants. He's earned the right to lie on a beach for the rest of his life and still be considered one of the greatest mangaka who ever lived. So if he wants to direct a CGI slam dunk movie, God bless. And then we have, lastly, Kagami no Kojou by the guy who's not Shinkai Makoto and not Miyazaki Hayao and not Hosoda Mamoru, but should be talked about in the same breath as those guys, in my opinion. He's done several great animated films and some live action films that are very well regarded too. Harakeiichi, a wonderful director. In my opinion, Colorful, his movie Colorful is one of the 3 or 4 best anime films ever made. He's a great director, Harakeiichi is, and he deserves to be mentioned in the same breath as Hosoda, as Shinkai, but he never is. But he should be. Even in Japan, he's not as popular as those guys, and internationally, he's very little known. But he is a great director. He does great work when he writes his own material, but this one is an adaptation he's written of a novel by Sugimura Mizuki, which has won numerous awards. And it's about some 7 hikikomori in Tokyo who travel through a mirror into a fantasy realm, which seems to be kind of a dream place where they can escape from societal expectations and be free. But as you would expect, there's a darker truth hiding behind that. Its English title is actually the English title is a great title, The Lonely Castle in the Mirror. Which is not too far off of a translation actually from the Japanese title. So again, I love it when Hara directs his own original screenplays like he did with Colorful and Summer Days with Ku, but if he's going to do an adaptation, this is a pretty interesting piece of material to adapt. That one is coming just a couple days before Christmas, so right at the end of the season. But even more, I think, than the Shinkai film, this one is my top expectations theatrical film of the season. Kagami no Kojou, The Lonely Castle in the Mirror. And that, dear readers, is the fall preview. And I apologize for the length, but again, it's arguably the biggest anime season we've had in 10 years, arguably. Maybe not arguably the best, we'll know that in 3 months, but or 6. But certainly make a strong case for the biggest. It needed a little bit of a longer preview, so that's what it got. I hope it's as great a season as it looks like it could be on paper. There's certain things like Mob Psycho and Golden Kamuy, although there is that new studio thing with Golden Kamuy, but there's enough stuff. Iruma, Hiroaka, there's enough stuff this season that you know it's going to be a really good season. The question is it going to be great? And I hope it is. I hope Chainsaw Man blows me away. I hope the second core of Spy Family blows me away. I hope it's a great season. Hell, I hope Fumetsu is as good as Fumetsu no Anata is as good as it is when it's at its best. If it can give me 10 episodes as good as its best 4 or 5 from the first season, that's a great series. So I hope for the best. It'll be a shock if it's not at least a very good season, and I hope it's a great season. But even if it's not a great season, it will be great fun to watch the commercial fireworks as these big hype series hit the streets and stir the pot. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. I want to thank you for watching. I want to thank you for listening. I want to thank you for reading. As always, if you would see your way clear to liking, commenting, and subscribing, that would be extremely appreciated by me. And again, one last time, thank you to everyone who came through with financial support for the site on my last appeal. I really appreciate it. And I appreciate all the kind things people have said about LIA and about the work I've done for the last decade and more. It really means a lot to me to hear those things from people and to know that people really want this to keep going. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you again for listening. Thank you again for viewing. I hope you guys have a great fall. I can't wait for the weather to cool off. And on that note, all the more I want to say, as always, and please, if you take nothing else from this broadcast, take this to heart. Stay frosty.